Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and I have a finger puppet tutorial to share with you today. We are working on our spring finger puppet for our spring nature table, and I am using these beautiful green wool felts from A Child's Dream. I am also using this Lamb's Pride bulky white yarn for the hair. I'm going to pull 3 lengths of yarn so that I can make braids for her. These are super easy to do. I'm just going to tape down my yarn and then braid her a really long braid, but that's okay. We are going to be trimming this down. I just want to make sure that I have enough for it because we are going to be making this finger puppet extra long. I also went ahead and I did a double braid as well using 2 strands of yarn, but I found that the single strands worked better, especially since I am using bulky yarn. If you're using worsted weight yarn, then using 2 strands for the braids works a little bit better. I'm using my hot glue gun in order to get this in place. You want to make sure that you glue it down first before you trim off the extra piece of your braid, otherwise your braid will start to unravel. So once I got that measured correctly, then I went ahead and I glued down the other piece. I fiddled around with it a little bit, making sure that the finger puppet has the wood grain going in the correct direction. And once you receive your finger puppets and your peg dolls, you will be able to see that. Just want to make sure that the circular piece is going towards the front. Alright, so I'm going to trim down that extra piece at the bottom of the braids, but you want to hold on to that because that is going to become the material for our bangs. So I went ahead and I added a lot more hot glue there, and then I am going to squeeze these extra little pieces in place, and once I fiddle around with it and make sure that all of those strands are glued, then I'm going to go ahead and trim it off. And I think that looks really nice under this little bandana cap that I'm going to make for her. Otherwise it looks like she just doesn't have enough hair. Alright, so I'm just making sure that that piece is big enough. It's super easy to make. It's just a triangular piece, but I added a little bit too much glue at the top of the head, and once the glue dries, it does leave an imprint, so you do want to be mindful of how much glue you are using. Hot glue works really well for these projects because it keeps everything in place. It is super durable, but you just want to make sure that as you are gluing it down, you are careful not to use too much, otherwise you will see that glue, or sometimes it does seep through. I went ahead and I put her cap on a little bit different than I normally do, and I'm going to actually change it a little bit later on. I'm also trying to use up these little remnant pieces of felt. So I use pretty much all of my scraps, even down to the little pieces. We're going to hold on to all of those and we're going to put them in a scrap box and we're going to use them. But right now I just want her to be kind of tall, so you can see that I cut quite an extra piece here for her. And I want to make her extra tall because I want her really to be distinguished on our nature table. She is the spring nature finger puppet, and I do want her to stand out against some of the other peg dolls and finger puppets that we have on the nature table. I went ahead and I cut little notches towards the top so that it can tuck in well underneath the neck. Now I always start by working with the head and the hair, and in this case it made it a little bit more challenging in order to get her outfit in place, and in part it's because of the way that I did her cap, and I kind of made it with these 2 flaps kind of sticking out, and I'm really not sure why I did that because I never do that. I actually make other mistakes coming up in a little bit that you'll see, and so I try to remedy that mistake by sticking those down in the back, which actually causes a problem later on. Alright, so in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and do some embroidery. So I pulled out some white embroidery floss. Now you may think that it's a little bit difficult to do the embroidery since I already glued it down, but actually it makes it just as easy, probably even easier, because then you can see exactly where you want your embroidery to be. I'm going to go ahead and do these 5 pointed white flowers. I believe they are forget-me-nots, and I think they're perfect for spring. I really like the colors that my daughter chose. I love these greens. They are so iconic for spring, and I really like the white because it feels like that winter snow that just keeps peeking through into spring. So I really like these 2 colors together. So doing these embroidery flowers are super easy and they're really durable. I really like doing the embroidery even though it takes a really long time to do, because these kinds of details are going to stay versus doing some of the other accessories that I'm going to show you later on in this video. If you have young children, some of those other accessories are likely to fall off, and that makes it a little bit dangerous if you've got young children because some of these things can be chokeable, but embroidery is a really safe option. Alright, so I am going to go ahead and finish that embroidery, and this is what it looks like when it's done. I absolutely love it. It's super beautiful, and all I'm going to do is add a little bit of hot glue to the back of that rather than tying it off. It keeps it really secure, and then I can trim off that extra bit of embroidery floss. Alright, so I'm dipping into these beautiful spring colors. This is the spring collection. I absolutely love it. I do tend to buy my felt in individual pieces. That way I can choose all the colors that I want, but I am so pleased with these collections that I ended up buying all 4 seasons, and I am so happy that I did because these colors coordinate really well together. Alright, so I'm going to mess up on this cape. I end up doing a design that I didn't intend to do. Now, in order for a lot of that embroidery to show through, I am actually trimming down her cape so that you can see all that beautiful embroidery. Now, originally I had intended to do an open cape so that you could see the embroidery, and I completely forgot, and I'm gluing it down in this different style, but that's okay. You still get to see that beautiful embroidery. I want to add these beautiful little rhinestones to her cape as well as her little hat. Now, this doesn't work really well if you've got young children or children that really will enjoy picking apart your little accessories. My children are a little bit older, and so these tend to stay put. However, over time and with a lot of wear and tear, some of these accessories will fall off. So if you are concerned about that, I would suggest doing embroidery instead, or just skipping this altogether, or doing a little bit of decorative stitching along the edges would work really well. You would just want to do that before you glue her little cap down. So you can see here where her little cape kind of comes up a little bit above her cap, and I didn't really like the way that looked. So I am dipping into my felting stash here, and I'm using just this tiny little bit to kind of give her a little scarf. I imagine that some spring days are kind of chilly and she might need a little scarf, and I'm hoping that that will kind of cover up the little mistake that I made. Now, in the end, all of these mistakes are totally negligible. You can barely tell them at all. It's just that when you have a vision in your mind and it's not really going the way that you imagine, sometimes you try to do some of these different alterations in order to fix those mistakes. Alright, so this is what she looks like in the end. My daughter is over the moon excited about her, and so it really didn't matter about those little mistakes. She loved it anyway. Alright, so here's some clips of my daughter working on her finger puppets and peg dolls, and this is what she looks like on our nature table. If you want to see some of the other projects that we are doing for our spring nature unit, you can tap on the screen right now. And don't forget that you can check out what we're doing on a daily basis by visiting me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.